Well, if we think of the Persian king and Shadrach, Meshach, was it Persian? Anyway, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. They weren't faced with death either way. If they had been willing to, I don't know if it is, bow down to worship the king, then they'd have been spared. But they were men of principle. Still, we will not worship you, even if you are going to kill us. You know, it's under pain of death to worship you. No, I've taken this as all very noble. But I've also taken it, I notice in my recordings, as quite unnecessary. God has given you self-preservation so that you remain in the classroom rather longer. Don't just get killed out of hand. So, I mean, I don't know how valid the story is, of course. I mean, I'm not saying that this is an historic piece. I'm just saying it's a story that's worth considering, the situation that it conjures up. No, the right thing would have been to, okay, it's not a freedom that I'm being given here, and I am given this drive to stay alive, and God's given it for a reason. So I shall bow down in my heart. Of course, I'm not really worshipping the emperor or the king at all. I'm faithful to my God, but outwardly I will conform. Now, you might think, spiritually speaking, this is an untenable compromise. Not from God's point of view. You're a child. Even if it's a mistake, it's okay. You'll make mistakes. I'm not casting you off because of that. It comes down to what sort of God do you worship, you see. You worship a God that's going to leave you with horrific dilemmas that can be avoided. Well, I think you're on the wrong track. It doesn't sound like a loving God. Because if you have no fear of death, and you are, not terribly perturbed at suffering the pain of death, well, then you can run with it and refuse to bow down to the emperor. But you don't call those circumstances. You either find you're in such circumstances or you're not. In other words, you're not all the causes and conditions. You may have an absolute fear of pain and, a very low pain threshold, or whichever way round it is. You fear pain because of some experience in your life, and another person perhaps doesn't, because he's got through a certain level of pain and he found he could take it in some way. Now, in the discourse on statehood and how to run and not run wars, not giving your enemy this situation of they know they're going to be killed if we win, it's not a good idea, because it makes them desperate, and you could come to some agreement and compromise where killing your enemy is avoidable and quite acceptable to us. So in terms of the debate, it mustn't be the case that, the only way I can be convinced that communism doesn't continue is to kill all communists. Well, I mean, that's a disaster. I mean, communists therefore must kill you first, or for certain be killed. So that's not the way to go. And if your enemy goes that way, well, yes, looks like you're in a situation where you have to kill him first, whether you like it or not. because you don't like dying yourself, and that's the only possible way of avoiding them killing you. But if, on the other hand, they're only killing you in order to achieve a certain agreement, now it depends on how important is this agreement to you. Well, if you're a religious fanatic, it's the faith is to be put before my own life in this world. Well, you're going to fight pretty fearfully, aren't you? Fiercely. So the content of the ideologies held, the religions held, is important. And of course, Sarah's study makes that very plain and obvious. And I should have realized early on that she has, wittingly or otherwise, therefore, brought belief, and therefore beliefs in religion and so on, into the picture by trying to understand the background and the culture of the people concerned. Quite simply, what we choose and decide on and act is something to do at least with what our values are, or the values of the decision makers at least, which, in some sense are the elites that are concerned with political and military decisions. And of course their freedom to follow through on such influence and impressions will depend on all sorts of things, including the structure of the culture and political apparatus in which they're set. Case of Hitler, of course, he rearranged the decision-making apparatus so that it was much power in his hands. And elites like Roosevelt and Churchill might find politically there's not too much power in their hand, and they can't make the decisions that they wish to make. And so they do a bit of political and social propaganda engineering, bit of that to change the playing apparatus a little, so that it's right to go to war, it's right to do certain things that you couldn't otherwise be free to do. So the rule is, yes, in a world that has people, and people that have values, and values being much a function of what people's hopes are, and background and culture and religion and ideologies all play their part, as Sarah points out, in explaining, so to speak, giving you a model of that explains outcomes and perhaps helps you to make better decisions in some sense in the future, which is, as I understand it, at least one of the purposes of studying history, apart from the fun of understanding, trying to understand something that perhaps is not too well understood at the minute. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.